Good day, all. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Build a Stronger Zero Trust Foundation with Load Balancers. Sorry. My name is Rochelle Wheeler, and I am joined here today by Kurt. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. There is a questions panel located in the lower portion of your screen. You may need to expand that panel by either clicking the plus sign or the down arrow to see a full view. We will take questions at the end of today's presentation. You are encouraged to submit those questions via the questions panel at any time. Today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available at its conclusion. In addition, you will receive access to a copy of our white paper entitled Top Security Best Practices for Protection, Resilience, and the Reliability of Applications and APIs. I will now turn today's presentation over to Kurt. Kurt?
Okay, thanks, Rochelle, and thanks everyone for taking time and joining today's webinar. Again, I'm Kurt Young. I'm on the product team here at Progress, and we'll be talking to you today on why you should be looking at ways to leverage your load balancer, right? The Progress Kemp LoadMaster in this case, to help with securing your business critical applications. So let's get right into it. For the agenda, I do know that we have a bit of a mixed crowd where we have some existing customers, but also have some that are new to LoadMaster. So for those, we'll do a quick overview of LoadMaster as well as LoadMaster 360. So we're all really kind of on the same page as we start talking in more detail on the features and the capabilities. Then we'll get into, the why you'd want to enable security on the load balancer. And then we'll look at some different features and capabilities around that. I'll jump into a quick demo, and then we'll wrap up around some licensing options. And again, we'll get into the Q&A at the end. So starting off with LoadMaster. I feel this slide really offers a great overview of LoadMaster, and we'll be going deeper into pretty much all of these bullets throughout the presentation today. But just to highlight a few here, right? We've always been known as the easy to use solution. And if you looked at our G2 or Gartner Insight reviews, you'll see that pretty much raised consistently across them. From a platform where you have options of hardware, virtual or cloud, from licensing, we have subscription, we do perpetual. We'll talk more about pooled in more detail later, and how that relates to that per app or on-demand load balancing. The topic of today, right, we're talking about security capabilities. So we'll be digging into WAF, pre-authentication, and of course the Zero Trust Access Gateway. Now, again, it's one thing to enable these security features, but you also need the insights as to what these features are doing, right? And getting details on how they're helping protect those applications, and identifying ways you may need to tweak the configuration to optimize it, right? And that's not just really limited to the security aspects, but also insights on performance and availability as well. So that's where LoadMaster 360 plays. LoadMaster 360 is really just an extension of LoadMaster, right? Providing those insights as to the health, the performance, and security for the LoadMasters in your fleet, as well as those applications that are being published behind them. It's a SaaS offering, right? You can deploy these LoadMaster 360 connectors. They're really just a lightweight VM in your environment, whether you're running your virtual environment on premises, or you need to deploy connectors in a public cloud. You can deploy them in both environments. Now, these connectors really just feed the LoadMaster 360 tenant, where you can get this consolidated view of what's happening with your fleet. So to break it down a bit more, right, we can look at this across these LoadMaster 360 across these 6 features, right? We're starting off with certificate management. So obviously knowing the health and in the when your certificates are expiring, right? Are they expiring? Do you have over 90 days? So there's really at this point nothing to worry about, or is it less than 30 days, right? You need to take some action so you don't have an outage due to those certificates expiring. Application analytics and telemetry, right? Lots of great information coming out of this. We have user insights, right? Looking at like round trip time, server response time, to getting a better understanding of the performance of the applications, right? If there's some performance issue, you can quickly pinpoint where that issue is happening, right? Is it the network? Is it the backend server? Maybe it's even an issue with the client itself, and being able to understand where that problem may lie in the path. Configuration management and automation. This is still being worked on, but there will be some new features in the next release around some backup management. So keep a lookout for that, and we'll be continuing on getting that configuration management released. Incident management. So this is really to alert you on issues and potential issues with that context-rich information, right? So you can quickly address problems. And in addition to that, we have communication channels to alert you, right? And you have a lot of controls within those communication channels on, on what you want to be alerted on and when you want to be alerted as well. Application security and tuning, right? Obviously, the topic today. So we'll be going into more detail. We start talking about WAF and pre-authentication. And finally, the usability and experience, right? A lot of thought and work has gone into how the data is displayed, how you navigate to get the information you need with these optimized workflows. The way that it's been built, it's definitely usable for non-experts, right? So anyone can really go in here and get some really great information about the health and performance and security of the environment. So that was the quick kind of overview. Again, since we had this mixed crowd, I want to make sure that everyone was kind of aware of what we did. So with that, we can start digging into some of the security capabilities. So whenever I talk security on LoadMaster, I always find it really important to just talk about why. So for those who have seen me present before, you've probably seen this slide and heard me talk about this privileged position, right, that the load balancer sits in to enable this level of security. So we create these virtual services, which are really publishing the application, consists of a virtual IP address that the clients connect to, the pool of backend systems that are running the application, and all the additional settings that are within that to optimize the user experience. So we're directly between the user accessing the application and, of course, the application itself. And because of that, right, we have the ability to do things like terminate the TLS SSL connections, right, to look inside the encrypted traffic, and we can see the payload and what's actually being requested. So that gives us the ability to take action, right, using the WAF as an example, right, or limiting access to the application using the Zero Trust Access Gateway capabilities. But since we have this visibility and capability, right, we really need to take advantage of the things we can do here to help protect those workloads that are sitting behind the load balancer. And that's where we start talking about this layered security, right? As we all know, right, there's no silver bullet that's going to protect your network, your environment, right? So you need to take advantage of the security capabilities built into these solutions, right? If you're, that's going to be on top of the other solutions that you're running in your environment to help secure it, right? Now, you already have load balancers deployed, right? You're providing the availability and the scalability for the workload. And although you may not be able to turn on all of these features, and I'm not in any way suggesting that's what everyone does, but you should be looking at your published applications to see if you can even enable one of these capabilities to help protect. So we'll be digging into each of those, right? Looking at access control lists, the web application firewall, pre-authentication, Zero Trust Access Gateway, and hopefully one or more of these make sense for your published applications. So starting off with your standard ACLs. So we're, everyone's running some kind of ACLs in their environment, right? So LoadMaster has the ability to apply access control lists to the load balancer as a whole, or you can set them at the virtual service layer, so you can have unique lists for those applications you're publishing. If you have multiple applications on the LoadMaster, so whether you need to allow or block an individual IP address or a whole subnet, you can limit who and what has access to those applications. Now, of course, right, this approach, you would have to know this information, right? So if this was a public-facing application, it's going to be really difficult to have that list, constantly updated, because you don't really know who's accessing it. But if it is internal, right, and you have the knowledge of the networks that need access, and it's not really changing that often, this may be something that can be easily enabled to help lock this down a bit more, right? You can view and modify the list in the web interface, as you can see here in the screenshot, or you can use the API or PowerShell wrapper to script, right, or automate the addition or removal of ACLs as well. Moving on to the web application firewall. Again, this is enabled within each of the virtual services. It's going to protect the application against common exploits, right? It includes OWASP top 10, core rule set, but you can also create custom rules, right, based on specific patterns as well. There's adjustable thresholds, right? So you can kind of tweak the settings to avoid false positives, but still block that malicious activity. Now, these custom rules can be, again, created to block traffic, but as well permit traffic, right, to avoid those false positives. So depending on what you're looking to do, you can create those custom rules to, again, tweak that configuration. So similar, we talked about the access control list before, right? Within the WAF, you can enable IP reputation, right? This is a list of IP addresses of bad actors that's provided by Progress, right? In addition to any of those IP addresses you block manually. In addition, you can also block entire countries, as you can see in the screenshot here, within the WAF advanced settings as well. And we'll come back to talking about this a little bit later when we get into LoadMaster 360. Speaking of LoadMaster 360, right, with our enhanced WAF capabilities, you can see the screenshot of the WAF dashboard, right, giving you insights to, on the top there, you can see the top 10 triggered rules, top 10 blocked by IP address, top 10 URLs, with a kind of a summary on the right there. In the middle of the dashboard, we see our false positive activity, right? Here you can drill into these block requests and get details, right, on why they were blocked. In addition to that, there's a smart rule tuner, which helps you create these kind of custom rules, right, that can be applied to the LoadMaster to allow those connections moving forward. And there's different options that you can select if you want to, again, disable the whole rule, which is probably not what you want to do, but you can get more granular as far as blocking that rule on this page when you see this occur. So you can get more granular instead of like just disabling the entire rule. And at the bottom, where we're just looking at blocking entire countries, here you can see where that traffic is coming from, right? So you see those connections from countries that really shouldn't be accessing or attempting to access the application. You can just go ahead and block that traffic within the WAF configuration to lock it down that much more. Now, talk about pre-authentication, single sign-on capabilities, right, to help protect those published applications further. So whether you have an identity provider, an IDP on premises, right, or you're in the cloud using things like Azure Entra ID, you can authenticate users before allowing them access to those backend systems. So you have the ability to enable multi-factor authentication to further protect those applications. Lots of options. You can there's certificate authentication. We have some federal customers that have enabled pre-auth using the common access cards as well. So there's a lot of different options for the different protocols you can use to secure help secure that environment. And as you would imagine, right, we have widgets and dashboards available on LoadMaster 360 to give you details. As an example of when authentications are happening with heat maps, you can see the green widget there showing kind of when those authentications are occurring. We have the active single sign-on sessions widget, failed authentications, right? A blocked list of those users that attempted, one too many times to authenticate, as well as top 10 client IPs that are authenticating and the URIs to give you more information to understand how clients are accessing and authenticating to the application. So around these zero trust principles, right? We've touched on a few of these, right? So far, the explicit verification, app-specific access, always assume malice. And I want to talk a little bit more about this least privileged access, right? Giving users or really whatever's accessing the workload that's being published, the least amount of access based on their needs to complete a task. So there's this Zero Trust Access Gateway, or ZTAG, right? So this is not in any way a dedicated product or even kind of built for purpose functionality, right? This is built-in functionality that's been there forever, but used in a very specific way to address this need for customers to apply policy to virtual services, right? To limit access to the application at a very granular level. So the components that make up ZTAG, we have a policy file, which is really built out of XML, and a policy builder, which is built in PowerShell. In some scenarios, we use the authentication provider, the pre-authentication in some scenarios. And then, of course, you have your workloads below. This can be, just the web application, could be something running in Kubernetes, API access. Which is always an interesting one when it comes to ZTAG, or storage or something else, right? But it's basically HTTP traffic in some form. Now, I always like to use this example since I think it's just easy to explain, and this is actually the original ask of the customer where the Zero Trust Access Gateway was born. So this customer was running Dell ECS Object Storage, which is now rebranded as Dell Object Scale, in which we actually do a lot of load balancing for S3 traffic. But they had a need to apply. Really, they had a lot of applications, right, that were accessing the storage. So they wanted a policy of like what these applications could get access to, right? So you had these security zones defined by subnet. The one at the top was in the least secure zone, right? And moving down to the bottom as the most secure. So all of these applications across all of these zones had and needed access to some shared S3 buckets, right? And they wanted to make sure that under no circumstances should an application that lived in the least secure zone have the ability to write to a bucket that an application in the most secure zone would have access to, right? There was this fear that this least secure application could upload something malicious, right? That the application in the most secure zone could execute and compromise that entire zone. So as you can see, with this policy, right, on the top right there, security zone 1, right, the least secure with that IP address of 1067.2 can only read from the shared bucket, right? Security zone 2 with 192.168 can read and delete. And then the most secure zone of 172.16.99, they can read, write, and delete. So with this PowerShell script and policy file, we're able to create this collection of content rules on the LoadMaster to limit or allow what each zone or what each application can do. So with this scenario, right, we can jump into a demo to kind of show how this is used and how it works. So here I have my LoadMaster, and I have a virtual service set up, which is publishing these 3 backend ECS nodes. I have a certificate. If I go and modify here, you see I have a certificate installed, re-encrypting the traffic to the backend systems. It's s3.progress.com. I'm just doing some health checks here. The backend port for ECS encrypted is 9021 by default, so we're just using that default port. On the front end, we're using 443 to connect. You can see here, right, I don't have any content rules or anything created, so it's just a standard, allowing everything in. I don't have any ACLs or anything created there. So if I were to, I have this S3 browser, right, I can kind of go in here. I can see my shared bucket 1. I can kind of click into here. See if I'm still connected to this thing. Live demos, always fun. Okay, see if I can, so copy in there. So if I drag this demo file, and you see the last modification was 11.5. And now you can see it updates to 11.6, right? So I've just updated this file, so I'm doing a read. I'm not sure why it's not opening up the file to read it, but we'll come back to that later. That's less of a problem, but strange. But in any case, so now what I want to do is, because my machine is on that 1067.2, so right now I can write to this as we just did. I want to lock this down where I'm unable to write to this bucket, right? So if I go into my policy builder, and I'm going to open up my policy file, I have these settings that are defined here. So I have LoadMaster IP that I'm going to connect to, and the LoadMaster port as the first section. The second section is the virtual service configuration. So here I have the IP address of the virtual service, the port, a new name. Now I can expand this to add all of the different configuration options if I wanted to. I just wanted to kind of keep it very simple, where I'm just setting up the scheduling, I'm enabling TLS, re-encrypting the traffic, but obviously I can add a lot more here. I could also down here add a certificate if I didn't have one on there already, but since I already do, I don't need to worry about that. Down here, the next section is the real server configuration. So this is talking about the health checking. So we're doing just that health check on 9021 over TCP. It has the port here of what my real servers are going to use. Again, that default encrypted port for Dell ECS, which is 9021. And then I have my ECS nodes listed here, and I could just add more or less depending on my configuration. The next section is defining my security zones by network, by subnet. So I have this 1067.2, the 192.168.99, and the 172 as well in security zone 1, 2, and 3. This section is really defining kind of the who, what, where kind of scenario, right? Of what source IP, right, based on the security zone, the method, and what bucket, right? So I can just build this out based on my my needs. Here you can see I'm doing the reads here. I'm doing the reads and deletes on the 192 and 168. And then the 172, I'm doing it reads, deletes, and post as well. Down at the bottom, we just have some, as part of the policy builder run, I have the option to take a backup of the configuration before I make any changes to it. And this is where I'm going to store the backup. And this is going to be the backup name. I'm going to append a date and time to it. And then down here, we're doing logging as well. So if there's any issues or troubleshooting, you can kind of look into the log and see where things might not have successfully updated or something like that, and be able to resolve that. So with this policy file, I'll just copy the path out of here to my clipboard. And then I'm going to go ahead and run the builder. So the builder, like I said, is just PowerShell script. Again, a kind of lengthy PowerShell script. Got a lot of things happening in here. So what I can do is I'm just going to go ahead and run that. And it's going to give me a little welcome message there. I'm going to paste my policy file in here. And then the first thing it's going to do is going to ask me to authenticate to my LoadMaster. And I do have some pre-flight checks. So obviously, if the password was incorrect or anything like that, it would basically throw up an error saying that, you try again. Or even in the policy file, if the policy file has some things that are misaligned or something like that, it'll also flag that at the beginning of the run as well. So we have a choice here of whether we want to update an existing virtual service or create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and just update that existing one that I showed you before in LoadMaster. So I'll go ahead and update that. And then it's going to ask me about selecting that certificate. So I'm going to go ahead and just select if I had multiple certificates, it'll all be viewed there. I'm going to select that S3 certificate. I'm going to go ahead and do a backup. So you see that backup of the current configuration has been taken. And then what virtual service do I want to update since I selected that update existing? So if I had other ones, they'd be listed here, but I want to do this CMD S3 HTTPS on that IP address. So I'll go ahead and click that, and it will start running through the builder to start creating these rules and everything, updating the virtual service, as well as adding what we called sub-virtual services, and we'll look at that. But the idea here, right, is this is obviously a very specific use case, and you may say, well, I don't have, I'm not running storage on-prem, and I don't need this. The idea here is this could really be extended based on the needs of your application. And that's really what this is kind of designed to be. So we can really extend this, talking to you about your needs of your application and how you may want to lock it down. And maybe there's a fit, maybe it's not a fit, but certainly having those conversations with you to see if there's something we can do with this. The builder itself, the script, just download it from the support site. If you wanted to, you could go in there and obviously modify it and things like that. We do have a checksum on there. So if you are going to modify it, then feel free to do whatever you want. But again, if you were modifying it, you really couldn't call support and have them troubleshoot it, because we'll check the checksum initially, and we can only support what's been published. So it's done here. So let's click OK. And if I go back here and I refresh the page, you'll see that the configuration is quite different, right? So we don't have those IP addresses anymore. Here we have sub-virtual services for each zone with those backend systems duplicated. And then also under content rules, we have all of these content rules created as well, which have, again, the security zones, the methods, and then the different buckets. And they're all connected in a very specific way to allow for this to operate properly. So now if I go back to S3, right, I'll go ahead and select this and try to copy that up there again. You'll see I got a failed message here, right? That it wasn't allowed to do that because I can no longer write to that. Now, again, I don't know why this thing is not opening up. But it's just the the S3 browser itself, I don't know. But in any case, I still should be able to open that file as well. I'm not sure why it's acting that way. But in any case, the idea to show that we can restrict that access to writing to the file, or to writing to the bucket. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about our pooled licensing. So we now have pooled licensing available through LoadMaster 360, right? We have new pooled tiers, which really make it easier to get started with the added benefits of ease of scale, right? And also includes the benefits of LoadMaster 360, which is included. So whether you're running virtual LoadMasters on premises or in the cloud or both, you can leverage this pooled licensing and disperse the available throughput across all of your instances. You have flexibility to add or remove the amount of bandwidth available on a given LoadMaster. Maybe your application is seasonal, right? You need more throughput certain times of the year. You can spin up new LoadMasters without having to go through procurement. You can take down LoadMasters that you don't need anymore and put that bandwidth back into the pool for the next time you need to spin one up for a new project or something, a new application that you need to publish. So you have the options to select capacities from 500 megabits per second, or 1, 5, or 10 gigabits per second, right? And you can update these as often as you wish as your demands change. This is where you can really divide up your available bandwidth to implement that per app load balancing, right? Rather than having all of your published applications going through a single large instance, right? So spreading the load across those smaller instances. The pool sizes, right, are really geared toward any size organization, right? You have as small as 2 gigabits per second, right, which includes 4 LoadMaster instances that can be deployed, going up to 500 gigabits per second, which includes 500 LoadMaster instances that could be deployed. So you can, of course, start smaller, right, and move up the tiers as you grow and need more bandwidth in instances. So let's just quickly give you a quick look here. So if you look here, if we go into our licensing repo in LoadMaster 360, you'll see here I have a 50 gig license tier. And you can see currently using 35. I have 15 gig available. And then I have all of my LoadMasters that are licensed down here. I have some information here. I could drill into this to kind of see, across the month of when I'm adding or removing the bandwidth to different systems. I can go ahead and click like this one here, which is the 92. I can go ahead and I can relicense that to either it's a 5 gig one now. I can change to a 500 or 1 gig or 10 gig, and then go ahead and just relicense that as well. So just wanted to give you a quick peek as to how we're providing insights to the pool and how you can manage it with LoadMaster 360. Okay, so we can kind of jump into Q&A, and also in addition, before we can always, if you wanted to, kind of try this out. Obviously we have free trial. You can go to kemptechnologies.com to download a free trial. You can download the Zero Trust Policy Builder. You want to play around with that? You can download both of those from our site. If you are a new customer, if you're an existing customer, then you probably already are aware of that. So let's go ahead and see what we have for questions. Okay, so we have one question here. Do I have to go with a pooled licensing to get LoadMaster 360? No, you don't. With pooled licensing, you'll get LoadMaster 360 by default. But no, if you don't need to go to pooled licensing. If you're perpetual, if you have hardware, whatever it might be, you can go ahead and separately get LoadMaster 360 without pooled. Do do you provide guidance on creating custom WAF rules? So short answer is yes. We do have in our support documentation, we do have some guidance around that of creating WAF rules. It's also built on mod security. So obviously there's a lot of documentation on mod security of how to build WAF rules. In addition to also what I mentioned before with the LoadMaster 360 is that you can also use the rule tuner to build those rules within LoadMaster 360 for those false positives as well. Let's see if we have any other questions. Not seeing any other questions. Rochelle, are you seeing any other questions there? I know sometimes I'm not navigating this Bright Talk properly.
No, I don't see any additional questions on my end.
Okay. All right, so we'll just give one more couple seconds. If anyone has anything they want to drop in there, that'd be great. Otherwise, again, thank you for your time. And again, if you have any questions further about any of this stuff, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to have a conversation and see if there's a fit there.
Okay. All right. Giving it a second. Okay. All right, all. Well, I would like to again thank you for joining today's webinar. As I mentioned, you will receive a recording of this webinar within the next few days or so. And in addition, you will also receive access to our latest white paper entitled Top Security Best Practices for the Protection, Resilience, Reliability, and protection of your applications and APIs. I thank you again for joining today's webinar.
And actually, we do have a few
And
come in here, so there will be a recording to let you know. Yep.
Yes, Andreas, the recording will be sent via email. Correct. Okay.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.